Disclaimer. Please forgive me now for there may be mispronunciations in this video. Michael Alig was born and raised in South Bend, Indiana, and was the second son of two sons born to John and Elke Alig. Michael liked to wear women's clothing, something his mother encouraged, and he immersed himself in the television shows like Dark Shadows. He was bullied often for his sexuality, but was still an A student, graduating in the top of 8% of his class. Although South Bend, Indiana was the fourth largest city in the state, it was too small for Michael. He'd go to New York to attend Fordham University, where he studied architecture, but did not graduate. He'd go on to another college that he also did not graduate from. By 1983, thanks to his boyfriend at the time, he got into New York's club scene. Michael wanted to be more than a party-goer, but one of the guiding lights of New York's nightlife. He was a busboy for Danceteria and Palladium, the two more prominent clubs in 1980s New York. He would come to know a number of people of the nightlife, such as Ernie Glam, Richie Rich, Kenny, Amanda Lepore, and James St. James. He also started hosting his own parties, such as the Filthy Mouth Contest, which participants would try to outdo one another in screaming obscenities. He also led lightning strike parties. Michael and his followers became known as the Club Kids. Michael's highest point came with Disco 2000, an event he held every Wednesday at the Limelight. It was an event that was fueled by a mix of alcohol and drugs. One of the bizarre acts was a man drinking his own urine. All this happened within the walls of what had been Church of the Holy Communion. An emergency room was set up in which people who pretended to be doctors and nurses would prescribe ecstasy, ketamine, and marijuana to their patients. One of the drug dealers at the Limelight and other Club Kids venues was 20-something Andre Angel Melendez. We'll be calling him Angel throughout the rest of this video. Angel was the son of Colombian immigrants. He was a former male prostitute who turned up shortly after the Club Kids' appearance on the Joan Rivers show. He was recognized by his white outfit that included aviator goggles, a white cap, and wings, which made it easy to spot him in the dark nightclub that was lit by black lights. Although Angel was part of the nightlife, he never quite fitted in with the other Club Kids. Michael's close friend James St. James said that Angel would strut around the formal church as if he were God's own cousin. People complained about his wings that would knock off wigs or spill drinks. But what really bothered James was the fact that Angel was every bit of a businessman. Where other dealers were perfectly happy to cut the Club Kids some slack, sometimes filling prescriptions for free, Angel was a stickler for being paid. The Limelight's notoriety grew, and with that it became the target of repeated raids by the authorities. And Angel was now a liability, who was kicked out and not allowed to return, and he would rely on Michael for a place to sleep. Michael didn't offer him his apartment out of generosity, but instead it was convenience that a supply of drugs was close at hand. While Angel was out, Michael and his roommate Robert Freeze Riggs stole the dealer's drugs and cash without saying a word, and with that Michael would fail to pay for his drugs as well. March 17th, 1996, a Sunday. Angel was done with Michael's ways. He came to collect from Michael, but Michael spent every cent he had ever got his hands on and had nothing on him. They were standing in Michael's bedroom. Michael denied that he owed Angel anything, and one of the reasons was that he allowed Angel to stay in his apartment for free. Angel grew angry and attacked Michael, destroying a glass cabinet in the process. Freeze was asleep in his own bedroom when the commotion woke him. He grabbed a hammer and rushed to help Michael. Freeze hit Angel on the head, but it only angered Angel more. When Angel lunged for the hammer, Freeze hit him again. Angel turned his attention back to Michael, which is when Freeze hit him a third time. Angel finally collapsed. What happens next differs between Angel and Freeze. Freeze claimed that Michael began choking Angel before putting a pillowcase over his head. The autopsy report did indicate that Angel had died of asphyxiation, instead of a hammer blows to the head. Michael admitted that they stole drugs from the lifeless Angel, which they took and relaxed for a few hours. When the effects wore off, the pair tried to revive Angel, going as far as to immerse him in a tub full of ice and water. They took the rest of Angel's drugs and spent the next few days in a narcotic haze. Unfortunately, killing Angel solved many of their problems. Not only did it erase Michael's debt, but he now had the money that Angel had been carrying that day. With the sum he stole, he was able to decorate what had been a sparsely furnished flat. When Michael had parties, his guests had no idea what he had done, at least at first. There was a growing stench that came from one of the bathrooms, and one partygoer happened to see Angel's stiff arm dangling from the bathtub, but he assumed that a guest had passed out. No one suspected that Michael's newfound wealth was due to a homicide. It took little time before Michael started telling his friends about the murder. His friends didn't know what to think. James St. James believed Michael though, while others thought he was trying to spread a rumor as part of an elaborate publicity stunt. After 2 weeks of lying in the tub, Angel's body was starting to give off an unbearable smell. Freeze was sent to Macy's to purchase 2 top-of-the-range chef's knives and a cleaver. After he returned, Michael swallowed several bags of heroin and set to work on Angel. He cut off Angel's legs, wrapped them in plastic, and placed them in a duffel bag. Freeze tossed them into the Hudson River. Next, for some unexplainable reason, Michael cut off Angel's genitals, but it is unknown what became of them. What remained of Angel was put in a large garbage bag that was placed into a box that once contained a television. Freeze threw in baking soda and hoping that it would absorb the odor. Both their judgment became impaired with drugs as they made no attempt to stay hidden as they borrowed a trolley from the doorman, took the box down the main lift, crossed the lobby, and called a taxi. They secured the box in the cab's boot and had the driver drive them to the Hudson, where they waited for the cab driver to disappear down the road. They pushed the box into the river, where they were surprised when it floated. This could have been due to some of the packaging being left in the box, which might have made it buoyant. If Michael had kept quiet, they might have gotten away with it. April 1996, Michael Musto, the columnist, had documented Michael's antics and ran a blind item in the Village Voice. It described how Mr. Mess and Mr. Dealer were fighting over money when in walked in Mr. Mess 2, who hit Mr. Dealer with a hammer. The 5-sentence piece was an accurate summary of what had happened and what was picked up by another Voice reporter, Frank Owen. A few issues later, the newspaper published a front-page story about the murder. Michael was on the run and sold the furniture he had bought, borrowed $1,600 from Gassion, and headed west with his friend Gitsy. When the drugs Michael had bought ran out in Colorado, he turned around and made for his mother's home. In June, Michael went back to New York. He tried to restart his career by hosting a party, but it failed. The rumors, or the truth, of Angel's demise hung over him. The television box containing Angel's torso, head, and arms had been found washed up on the shore of the Hudson River by a few children. Angel was wrongly identified as an Asian male, and the remains laid in the morgue for months. It was in November when the error was realized and corrected. It became clear to the police that the stories that surrounded Michael were not publicity seeking. They located Freeze and 3 hours later had her full written confession. Michael was harder to find, but he was found when they noticed his name and address on the bulletin board of a friend. The case against Michael was hard to pin on him since there was another person in the apartment on the morning of the murder, apart from Freeze and Angel. Daniel Oster, the heroin addict son of a novelist Paul Oster, had been sleeping in Freeze's bedroom when Angel arrived. Oster told several contradictory stories, none of which fitted Freeze's confession. There was also the presence of Michael's blood. He had done his best to clean up after his struggle with Angel, but there was evidence that he had received significant injuries when he had been slammed into the glass cabinet, which served to support the possibility of self-defense. Michael and Freeze accepted identical deals, 10 to 20 years imprisonment in exchange for a plea of manslaughter in the first degree. Though there were several club kids in attendance to the court day on October 1st, 1997, Michael's, Freeze's, and Angel's families were not represented, and no members of Michael's family attended his sentencing. Freeze prepared and read a long speech that expressed his regret for his actions. Michael claimed that he had only agreed to this plea after being lied to and intimidated. The judge, Justice William Wetzel, would have none of it. "You are the victim," he asked. "In a way," Michael said. "I don't think you are the victim. I think that Angel Melendez is the victim. He is the victim of your selfish, uncontrolled ego that had yet to be harnessed, that he had yet to face reality. For you, the show is over. The party is over." Less than a year into his sentence, Michael was the subject of a documentary, Party Monster, the Shockumentary. In 2003, his story was turned into a feature film also called Party Monster. James St. James then wrote a book called Disco Bloodbath about Angel Melendez's murder. He also made a habit of recording his telephone conversations with Michael. Some of them have been included in his regular internet blog. Michael has been denied parole twice, but was released on May 5th, 2014. Freeze was released on a parole in 2010. On Christmas Eve 2020, shortly before midnight, Michael passed away on accidental drug overdose at the age of 54. What do you think of this party monster? Do you think he deserved more time in prison? Did you like this video? Want to get early access to support this channel? Feel free to check out my Patreon page where I create content on cryptids, hauntings, alien abductions, serial killers, and much more. Can't support me there? Like, comment, and subscribe here.